Hello and welcome to the Hydrographic Society in Scotland online evening meeting. My name's Simon Canning. I'm the chair of the Hydrographic Society in Scotland, and our evening is entitled Saildrone and Sulmara, a voyage into the unknown. So we've got two great presentations for you this evening. Before we get started on those, I'd just like to invite you to ask questions as you watch the presentation. You can ask them anytime you like. If you're logged into your Google account and you're watching YouTube through that, you can add questions into the comments section. And after the two presentations, we will ask our presenters the questions collectively at the end of the presentation. So first up, we have Isabel Cave. She's the Senior Project Manager at Saildrone, and her presentation this evening. Hi, Liz. I nearly did it again, Isabel. Isabel's presentation this evening is a history and track record of Saildrone. So over to you, Isabel.
Thanks, Simon. So thanks for the introduction and thanks for having me today. As Simon mentioned, my name is Isabel Cave and I'm a Senior Product Manager at Saildrone. I've been with the company for about 2.5 years, coming up to 3 years, based out of Alameda in California, although as you can probably tell from the accent, not originally from the States, but from the UK. I've been in the States for about 4 years. So today, as is already mentioned, Andy and I are going to do a kind of double-handed presentation. I'm going to start off with an overview of Saildrone, the company, what it is we do, the types of projects and missions that we've run over the last few years. And then I'm going to talk in a bit more detail about our bathymetric work and the Surveyor, which is one of the vehicles that we use to do deep sea mapping. And I'll talk in a bit more detail as well about how we actually conduct those surveys before handing off to Andy, who's going to talk more about our partnership with Sulmara and our plans for that partnership. So what is Saildrone? For those of you who are not already familiar with us, we're an American-owned and operated company. And we build and operate uncrewed surface vehicles out of Alameda, California. So that's just across the bay from San Francisco. We currently make 3 sizes of vehicles. So we have the Explorer, the Voyager, and the Surveyor. And those are 7, 10, and 22 meters long, respectively. In this slide, on the right-hand side, you can see our fleet of Explorers in our shop here in Alameda. So we build and assemble and fit out these vehicles on site on our production floor here. And then on the left-hand side, you can see an Explorer alongside the hull of the Surveyor. So just to give you kind of an idea of the relative size of the Surveyor compared to our smallest drone. So currently we have a fleet of around 100 vehicles. And last summer, we deployed around 45 of those concurrently on paid missions in lots of different locations around the world. Our vehicles are powered primarily by wind and solar. For the Explorers, that's exclusively by wind and solar power. And they give us the ability, us and our customers, of course, the ability to monitor the planet in real time above and below the surface. We currently run a data as a service business model. So that just means that we own the hardware. We don't actually sell the vehicles to our customers. We sell the data that the vehicles collect. So throughout a mission, customers get some of that data in near real time. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in just a moment. And then at the end of the project, we hand over a data deliverable, which is really what the customers are paying for. And we've been running paid missions for around about 7 years now, and have partnered with a lot of different organizations across defense and civilian government and scientific organizations. So everyone from NOAA to the Scripps Institute and NASA. So as I mentioned, around 7 years now of paid missions. Throughout that time, we have covered quite a lot of ground with our vehicles. So more than 15,000 days at sea and more than 500,000 miles sailed. And the kind of stat that I find the most exciting, more than 400 million data samples that have been collected throughout that time. And in the course of those missions, we have operated in some pretty exciting places. So everywhere from the Bering and the Chukchi Sea up in the Arctic, all the way down to a circumnavigation of Antarctica in the Southern Ocean via the tropical Pacific, lots of missions off the coast of the west coast of the United States and the Mediterranean, just to name a few examples. So each vehicle is outfit with a suite of sensors, and that suite of sensors really depends on the customer that we're kind of carrying that mission out for. So there is some flexibility there, but there is also a core suite of sensors that at least all of our Explorer drones carry, and those include things like an anemometer, an ATRH sensor, and a barometer. And as I mentioned earlier, all of these are powered by wind and solar. And then depending on what the customer is looking for, we have a few different kind of keel payloads that we can switch out. So echo sounders for fisheries studies, ADCPs for current studies, and single beam, like DT800s, for example, for single beam bathymetric mapping as well. And both of us will talk in a little bit more detail about the payloads that we carry on the Surveyor and Voyager as well, because they're a little bit different. We run three main types of missions. So the first are ocean data missions. These are mainly using the sensors that we saw on the previous slide, mainly carried out by our Explorer drones, so our smallest drones. And the applications that we work on for ocean data science with our customers include everything from climate science to meteorological data collection to marine mammal tracking. So one example of this that folks may be aware of, because it was in the news a little bit last year, was we sent five vehicles to try and kind of put them in the path of hurricanes in the Atlantic last autumn. It was in kind of September, October time. So we wanted to measure with NOAA and PMEL how hurricanes intensify offshore before they make landfall. So yeah, that was a pretty exciting kind of ocean data mission for us. The next type of mission that we run are maritime domain awareness, or MDA missions. So for these, we do carry a slightly different kind of payload setup, and that includes a couple more sensors. So the first is an Argus camera, which is a camera that we build here in-house, and that's that kind of black box that you can see on top of the wing in the image on the left-hand side. And we fuse the data from that camera with data from our AIS unit, which all of our drones carry, and sometimes also with data from a radar, which we can carry on Explorers and Voyagers and also Surveyors. So we run sensor fusion on board the drone itself. We run a machine learning algorithm which fuses all of that sensor data together and can recognize targets of interest and alert the customer in our portal. So we kind of think of this as like our eyes and ears at sea. And applications for this include things like trying to identify illegal fishing activities, smuggling activities like arms smuggling, people smuggling, for example, and also just kind of general harbour security. And then last but not least, the third type of mission that we run are ocean mapping or bathymetry missions. We have been collecting single beam bathymetry data using Explorers, our smallest drones, for a number of years now, but we're starting to move into multi-beam mapping territory using the Surveyor and also the Voyager, which is what I'm going to talk a bit more about next. So the Saildrone Surveyor, as I mentioned, this is our largest vehicle at 22 meters long. We launched it in 2020, just a couple of years ago, and it's really optimized for deep water bathymetric data collection. So to that end, we carry the EM2040 and the EM304 Kongsberg sonars. We actually commissioned the vehicle in early 2021 in collaboration with UNH and CCOM and Kongsberg, all working remotely. So here we can see kind of images of where all of those different payloads are located in the gondola, and some images of the kind of calibration exercise that we carried out with those partners in 2021, working both inside the San Francisco Bay and just offshore in California as well. So the purpose of the surveyor is really to be able to reach areas that would be very expensive and or time consuming for conventional ships to reach. So I guess some of the advantages of working with a vehicle like this is that it is completely remotely piloted and controlled. So obviously we don't have any crew on board the vehicle. Our pilots sit in California, in the UK and in Australia, and our surveyors sit in various locations around the US, so Florida, Rhode Island, and Oregon. So we're able to have a completely remote team, which especially during COVID has been a real bonus. And we're able to run 24-hour operations because we have those teams located at different locations around the world. And yeah, we're able to reach some pretty interesting and remote areas. So just to give you a little bit more of an idea of some of the missions that we've completed with the Surveyor recently, after we completed that calibration exercise off the coast of California here, we went out for a final test. And the point of this was really to make sure that we were uncovering any issues in our processes and our software before we went further offshore. So this allowed us to kind of further develop our acquisition and onboard processing workflow. And in the course of doing that final test, we actually identified a new seafloor feature, which was pretty exciting for the team. So after we had completed that final test, we judged that we were ready for our kind of real inaugural voyage, for which we decided to sail to Hawaii. So from the San Francisco Bay all the way to Hawaii, unattended, of course, as I mentioned, with our pilots sitting in California and our surveyors in Rhode Island and at that point Nevada. This transit was partially funded by the Nippon JEBCO SIBA 2030 project, so the data is going to be made publicly available, and it gave us a real insight into how to command and control a vehicle like this and make sure that we're getting good data off it. So that was just shy of 30 days at sea, and just shy of 25,000 kilometers squared mapped in that transit, with 74% of that data being new data because we were able to plan a route that took us over areas that hadn't been mapped already. And yeah, just to share with you some of the data that we collected. Obviously, this is what the team here really likes to see and to get to inspect, but we saw a lot of really interesting features on the way. So yeah, really kind of a nice confirmation that everything was working as it should have been. Once we arrived in Hawaii, we decided to do a kind of data comparison exercise. So we wanted to map an area that had been mapped previously by a traditional survey vessel. So we chose an area just off Oahu that had previously been mapped by the Falcor with its EM302 system. And we found that the Surveyor has comparable coverage to the Falcor, which was a really good outcome, and we were really pleased to see that. So once we'd completed that exercise, we then sailed all the way back to California. So we're continuing to iterate on our processes and our workflows, including collecting not only bathymetry depth data, but backscatter and water column data as well. So the last main section that I'll cover here is how we actually conduct our surveys. So as I mentioned already, of course, our team is remote. We spend a significant amount of time before we set off to sail, going through survey planning activities between our pilots, our surveyors, and the customer. So creating a mission plan and creating a data management plan. And we actually use a centralized portal called Mission Portal, which I'll show a couple of images of in just a moment, as the kind of hub for all of that communication and figuring out our survey plan and our line plan, the areas that we want to cover and how we want to cover them. So yeah, this is just a centralized place where all of the teams involved in a survey can collaborate, and it just eliminates the need to kind of email artifacts back and forth, convert files from different formats, all that kind of thing. It can all be accessed in one place. So as well as a kind of collaboration hub, Mission Portal is also the place where our customers can view data that is being collected during a mission. So as I mentioned, we deliver some data in near real time. So that's things like environmental metocean data. We have kind of time series charts that you can view all of that data in, as well as layers for bathymetric coverage. So the customer can view all of that as it is coming in. And then, of course, there's the full data deliverable that is handed over to the customer at the end of the mission as well. So just digging into a little bit more detail on all of that, this is really just a kind of a quick view of what you can see in Mission Portal. So it's an application that you can access from any device anywhere in the world, and you can see in the view on the right-hand side, you've got the chart on the left, which shows you where the vehicles are, where the mission is actually taking place, and the line plan that those vehicles are going to be following, as well as some time series data on the right-hand side, so customers can really start inspecting that data as it's coming in. Other kind of other things that we can display in Mission Portal include layers for areas that have already been mapped. So this is a really useful tool for our surveyors and our pilots when trying to figure out exactly which lines to run. So obviously we're always trying to optimize for mapping areas that haven't already been mapped, of course within the requirements of the customer sets out. So we can lay these over our charts and make sure that we are, as I say, optimizing for areas that have not already been mapped. And then this is just really a demonstration of our line planning. So again, in Mission Portal, our surveyors will go in and they'll draw an area based on what the customer has requested. They can then generate survey lines within that area, and then finally generate a route based off of those survey lines. And the route is what actually gets sent to the vehicles to dictate how the vehicles should navigate. And then the vehicle itself figures out how to get from point A to point B, whether it needs to sail upwind, whether it's reaching across the wind, so the point of sail, and yeah, how to navigate along that line. On the Surveyor, we do also have an engine. So this is partly for being able to generate enough power for some more power-hungry payloads, so the Kongsberg sonars primarily, and then also so that we can continue to keep to our lines really closely if the wind is not kind of cooperating with the survey lines that we want to run on a given day. So then once we've sent our line plan to the vehicle, we are monitoring data acquisition on board the drone with a suite of kind of third-party software that you'll probably all recognize. So the likes of THSiS and Quincy to operate and monitor the sonars and make sure that the data that we're collecting is good. And then once we have collected that data, we can visualize it in Mission Portal. And looking at this slide, I think that the screen capture that I had inserted here might actually not be working, unfortunately. But what you're looking at here is the track that the vehicle has run off the coast of California, and what you should be seeing is an overlay that just lays over the top of those two areas. So it's showing near real time unprocessed bathymetric data. So what we use that for is obviously to demonstrate progress to customers, and then also internally so that our surveyors can see, we're getting the overlap that we need, we're not creating holidays in the data, and if we are creating holidays, where we need to go back to map those gaps. So then in addition to the near real-time data, we also do some light onboard processing to provide a daily processed layer as well, which we also can display in Mission Portal. So the likes of what you're looking at on the left, there should also be another screen capture on the right, which I'm afraid is also not working, but you can kind of imagine a similar thing. We overlay that data onto the chart exactly where it was collected. And then last but not least, as I mentioned, Mission Portal is where our customers can see that data in near real time, but what most of our customers are really interested in, of course, is the final data deliverable. So depending on the customer requirements, that can include metocean data. It'll always include the raw bathymetric data and processed data as well, if that is what is required. So what's next? This is really where Andy comes in, but Andy's going to talk more about the Voyager. As I mentioned, I've talked a lot about the Explorer, so the drone on the left-hand side, and the Surveyor on the right-hand side, and we have recently been working on a prototype drone for the Voyager, which is the kind of middle-sized drone, and the idea with this is that it's our kind of coastal mapping workhorse, so it fills in the gap between kind of shallow water. Well, it fills in the gap of being able to do multi-beam, shallow water multi-beam mapping in between the Explorer and the Surveyor. So yeah, with that, I will hand over to Andy.
Thanks very much, Isabel. That was excellent.
Thanks, Isabel.
Really informative. As Isabel said, up next we've got Andy Doherty. He's the Global USV Manager at Sulmara. And his presentation this evening is entitled Operational Experience and Future Plans with Saildrone. So over to you, Andy.
Thanks, Simon, and thanks, Isabel. I'm the Global USV Manager for Sulmara. I've worked at Sulmara for about 18 months now. And my remit is to deliver USV services to our clients globally. So following on from what Isabel's given us an overview of the of Saildrone, the company, and the technology that they provide. What I want to focus on is our partnership, and this partnership between Sulmara and Saildrone started about a year ago. The collaboration was born out of shared ideals to deliver sustainable marine solutions, and with the technology and track record that Saildrone provide, coupled with the experience that Sulmara has in executing operations supporting global offshore energy, this is culminated in Sulmara committing to 10 Saildrone Voyager systems with the aim to provide sustainable marine solutions in geophysical operations, met-ocean and environmental data, marine domain awareness and security, and data harvesting and subsea positioning. The Saildrone Voyager, as Isabel's mentioned, it's a 10-meter long vehicle powered by primarily solar energy and propelled by wind, but coupled with a highly efficient diesel generator. This allows for long endurance marine platform of up to 180 days that can host a variety of payloads over and above what's been detailed on the Explorer vehicle. So the Voyager payload can be broken down into 4 main categories: the acoustic payload, the atmosphere and ocean payloads, and the marine domain awareness payloads. The acoustic payload includes an NMR medium sub-bottom profiler and an Orbit I-ATS multi-beam with integrated POS-MV. And something that's additional to the Explorer and also included on the Surveyor is a sound velocity profiling winch that can take casts up to 150 meters to constantly update the multi-beam as you're doing long missions. The atmosphere and oceanographic sensors on Voyager will fairly similar to the Explorer capture air temperature, humidity, barometric pressure, salinity and temperature in the water, as along with wave height and period. And the awareness suite on the Voyager will be similar to the Explorer with an AIS, the 360-degree camera with inbuilt machine learning, but also incorporating that marine radar as well. So how are Sulmara going to bring these vehicles to bear on the market? Basically, we're going for a collaborative phase delivery. So we commence with a workshop phase which is partly finished and currently ongoing, where Saildrone will demonstrate the operation of the vehicle to us, and so we can get a baseline for what it is that the vehicle can do. Then we'll work with them to integrate additional payload, mainly focusing on the sub-bottom, because the primary focus of the Surveyor has been multi-beam. So working out the integration, the tuning of the payloads working together, and how we can integrate that from hard and software into Mission Portal. focusing on logistics and maintenance, as we want to deliver a global footprint. The logistics and maintenance is very important to us to get those processes and support nailed down. And then once we move out into the marine domain for operational processes, so that we can ensure that we are satisfying our clients' needs for marine assurance for both the IMCA flag states and client marine assurance departments. And then that will allow us to develop slightly different set of marine standing orders and matrix of permitted operations for the vehicle for each type of business line that we'll be working in. And then moving forward, we'll be doing endurance verification, super user training for ourselves so that we can become self-sufficient to operate these vehicles, but with still support from Saildrone in the background. And then finally, we'll be looking to integrate some bespoke Sulmara developments that we've been working in-house and to integrate that into the Saildrone platforms. So once that phase is finished, we'll be moving forward into the customer acceptance phase, which will be a more formal delivery of the vehicle from Saildrone to Sulmara, where we'll be performing maintenance and logistics verification, going through all the work that we've done in the yard, and going out to sea and performing those marine operations and verifying that all the processes that we've created are working. And doing the same with our surveyors to calibrate and test the payload to be delivered on the vehicle. And then working through a series of emergency response drills where we work through contingency, how we deal with any eventualities that we can see with the vehicles operating at sea. And then once the vehicle's packed up and delivered to the place that we want to host it, we'll go through post-delivery commission, where we'll essentially repeat a lot of those tests again at the hosting site, perform internal sea trials so that we can confirm that what we've seen in California is what we're seeing in the place that we've delivered the vehicle to. And then we'll perform a client demonstration with a local client base to demonstrate how the vehicle will work in their site. And so there will be a phased approach to this execution. Sulmara and Saildrone will partner to ensure that our operators get the support and training that we need to deliver projects globally. Our pilots will be based in Glasgow and Singapore, and we'll transition from an assisted piloting regime through to Saildrone mission with assistance from Saildrone mission managers through to a full independent operation with continued field and remote support from Saildrone. Assets will be deployed globally to support our clients in the energy markets. Systems will be delivered in multiples to ensure redundancy, but also to give our clients the option to compress their schedule by deploying multiple assets on single projects. And then moving through to commercial operations, we see these vehicles working throughout the life cycle of an energy project, from site assessment with high resolution geophysical, met-ocean environmental capture, for instance, performing continuous sand wave monitoring, then through to the construction phase, where with a resident USV, they could potentially replace CTV surveys, collecting multi-beam sub-bottom data and continuing to monitor the met-ocean environment. And that will reduce mobilizations, demobilizations, and personnel transfers and all types in the UK, through Europe, through to wind farms in Asia and North America. And then finally through to the operations and maintenance phase of a life cycle, where we would continue to do scour surveys, cable burial monitoring, and still continue with sand wave monitoring as well. And that's really where we see these vehicles. What we're delivering is not a development project. This is a product with real track record for delivering data in varied and harsh conditions. And I think now I would like to open the floor up and get your feedback on what you want to see next. What's on your individual roadmap, and how can we assist you on that journey? Thank you.
Great, thanks very much, Andy. So, well, we've got quite a few questions here for you guys. You'll be pleased to know. Hopefully, we've made them as difficult as we can possibly get them to give you a bit of a challenge. So, just to kick off, I guess, as we've been going through, I guess they'll be in chronological order. So, Isabel, I guess, how long do these vehicles take to build? We saw from your images of the production floor there that you had a number of vehicles in being built or at various stages of production. Sort of how long would it take to build an average vehicle and commission it and whatnot?
Yeah, for the Explorers, and I'll take the Explorers just because we have built many more of those than we have of any other vehicle type. But we build all of the hulls and wings. They're composite. We build them out of our shop here, and they take a couple of weeks to build and to cure, and then another couple of weeks for assembly. So installing all of the electronics and all of the sensors onto the drones themselves, and testing. So we go through a pretty rigorous what we call readiness process, where we make sure that the drones are configured in the right way and that they're tested, that we've got the right versions of software and firmware running on board of them, that all of the sensors are reporting data in the way that they should be, and sea trialing the drones as well. So end to end, about a month. Obviously, sea trials depend on weather and all of that kind of stuff as well in the bay. Yeah. So it's not necessarily a month of continuous work, but somewhere in that region. Yeah.
Okay. And talking of weather, have you ever what type of conditions can the vehicles cope with?
Yeah, this is a good question, one that we get asked pretty regularly. They're very sturdy, so they're really built for reliability and persistence, because we see our kind of niche as being able to go to places that conventional ships don't want to go to because they're too remote, too expensive, the weather is too harsh. So like I mentioned, we sent 5 Explorers fitted with special hurricane wings. So they're shorter wings than the ones that you've seen in the images that I showed today. But they're really designed specifically for very heavy weather. And those drones went into the eye of a hurricane last year and they came out absolutely fine. So they can survive hurricane level waves and wind. Similarly, we sent a few down to the Southern Ocean, which I think is kind of widely understood to be pretty much the harshest marine environment in the world, and they were able to complete that circumnavigation of Antarctica. So they're pretty sturdy vehicles.
Okay, well, thanks. That's a great answer. Just how often? I guess obviously it depends on weather, but and wind. But how often do you switch from sail to motor? I guess is the question.
Yeah.
There must be a kind of nominal average or something like that, I guess. Is there?
So it's another great question. As I mentioned, the Explorers are entirely wind and solar powered, so they don't have an engine on board, but Voyagers and Surveyors do. On the Surveyor, we turn the engine on every day for around about an hour to make sure that we have the batteries charged up, and then so that we can run everything on board, including the sonar payloads. And then outside of that, as you say, it really depends on the weather. So if we've got good wind and it's coming from the right direction, then we will sail as much as we can because that really increases our endurance and makes us, more environmentally friendly. However, if we don't have enough wind or it's not, it's kind of not cooperating with where we want to run our survey lines, then we might turn the engine on more frequently. So it really does depend, but that baseline of having the engine on every day for charging is still there. And we can do kind of pure sailing where we obviously don't have the engine on at all, pure motoring, where we're just using the motor for propulsion. We can also do motor sailing. So if you imagine we're kind of reaching across the wind, then we have the motor on, and we can also use the wing to kind of give us an extra degree of power as well. So we have a few different options that we can use there.
Yeah, so you're just always trying to find the most efficient way of keeping the vehicle moving in the direction you want to keep it moving in. Yeah,
exactly.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so if I may, how many vehicles do you currently have operational at the moment around the world?
Right now, I think it's in the region of about 20 on mission at the moment in various different locations.
Yeah. Wow.
And it's quite a seasonal business, so we tend to see fewer vehicles out in the Northern Hemisphere winter, and more out in the Northern Hemisphere summer, because obviously when we're operating in areas like the Arctic, we have to go up in a very specific window to work around the weather and the ice.
Yeah. Okay, that's interesting. So do you have, I guess this might be a question for both of you. Would you have plans to add any additional towed sensors to the vehicles at all?
Was that towed sensors?
Yes.
Yeah. So we're working on a project at the moment for a passive acoustics towed array currently we don't have anything on the roadmap for hydrographic, like towed hydrographic devices. We work in the realm of like anything is possible, but we have to really assess requests for integration of new sensors on a basis of, is this technically feasible, and is it kind of commercially viable? So like I say, it's not something we have on the roadmap right now.
Yeah, sure. Okay.
Do you want to add anything to that?
No, that's
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, so do you see an ASV and an AUV working in a force multiplier and or as a cooperative solution in the near future?
Do you want to say that one?
Yeah, it's a fairly similar answer that Isabel just gave, but yeah, anything is possible, but and that would be more of a easier to achieve without having to tow a physical cable. But yeah, it's something that's definitely possible, but not particularly on the roadmap right now.
Okay.
For a little bit more context on that, we have run, again, these were ocean data missions, but we have run missions previously where we've done some pretty close coordination between different types of vehicles. So Saildrones have gone out as part of like a much broader fleet, including ships, gliders, planes, and we've worked together as part of that fleet to achieve whatever it was the customer was interested in. So yeah, that coordination is possible, but it's not something that we're planning with Sulmara in the short term, at least.
So that was kind of like a multi-platform operation, I guess, by the sounds of it.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, super. What have we got here? Sorry, guys, we've got several different methods of asking questions here. So I guess for you both, maybe based around, I guess, people moving from working offshore to onshore, what is being put in place to manage the change in working environments for the pilots and surveyors that are now working offshore, I guess, that used to work offshore? I guess
that's a really good question. So yeah, like I mentioned, we have kind of dispersed remote teams, and we work really closely still as teams, even though people are in different locations. So we're kind of in constant contact, whether that's on Zoom or on the phone or on kind of chat messenger type thing. And then the folks who are remote do come to Alameda because that's where our headquarters are on a fairly regular basis. So every couple of months. So we have face-to-face time. Obviously, throughout, like, I guess, due to COVID, people are pretty used to working remotely, but we one of the things that we do is make sure that we have really clearly defined processes for our pilots and our surveyors. So, you know, we know the processes that they're going to follow, and those are kind of, for want of a better word, enforced, so that folks are all following the same processes, even if they're in different locations. And then, aside from that, I think just, you know, regular check-ins, making sure that we're keeping people up to date with training, which again, we're lucky is something that we can do remotely because we're all remote from the vehicles that we work with, even if we're in the same location in Alameda. So that does mean that doing that training and bringing people on board, if they're in locations that are not in California, is probably a bit more straightforward than it might be if we were working you know, on the vehicles themselves.
Yeah, I mean, from our perspective, we pilot the USVs in a more remote operations center environment where we have pilots in our remote operations center, and we try and create as much of a bridge atmosphere in our ROC as they would be used to on a traditional crewed ship. And that allows us to create standing orders that would be performed in the ROC just as they would be on a bridge. So we try and create as much of that environment as possible, mostly to comply with regulations, because the remote operations center will be certified and regulated just like a bridge would be on a ship. So we try and keep that as similar as possible.
I guess most of your pilots and surveyors have they worked offshore previously? And I guess the same question within a question is what are your thoughts about I guess there will come a time maybe where people haven't worked offshore before. They will have, I guess, come to a central place and been undertaken some training. How do you think that will? Have you got any thoughts on that? So do you think maybe a lack of experience offshore may affect operations onshore, for example, when eventually perhaps people have never experienced that environment before or worked there before?
I'll let you speak to the Sulmara piece, but just from the Saildrone perspective, all of our pilots and surveyors have experience offshore. That's like a kind of hard prerequisite for us considering them as candidates. And I don't think that we're you know, planning to start hiring people who don't have that experience because it's so important for what they're doing. So yeah, it's not currently the team all have offshore experience, and we're not planning to change that. But for Sulmara,
yeah, it's the same for us. For our pilots that we want to recruit master mariners that have the experience and knowledge of how to operate vessels at sea, and that's something that's flag state requirements in many places. And then for surveyors, it's the same. We want to have as much experience as possible, especially in this initial phase. But in the future, on the surveyor side, it could be a bit more easier. But as far as I'm concerned, and on the marine side of it, we want experienced mariners to be within our pilot pool.
Do you see I guess with the increasing use in automated systems, do you see a time when there won't be an opportunity for people to go offshore and learn what to do? Out of interest.
Personally, not for a long time. This technology is to provide more sustainable solutions, but as far as I'm concerned, there's always going to be a place for mariners, and they're always going to have to go to sea. So I don't think that's going to be an issue or something that we have to overcome in the medium future.
Okay. how might the machine learning capability be implemented on commercial survey and metocean projects? Question from Oliver Pope.
A great question. So it's not, well, a couple of examples of things that we're kind of investigating. So on the ocean data side, one of the areas that currently requires a fair amount of kind of manual time investment is QC of the data. So we would love to have a solution in place for using machine learning to reduce the amount of manual QC work that needs to happen. And on the bathymetry side, I think there are a lot of potential applications. So everything from better and more automated line planning to autopiloting. So looking at where the gaps are that we have in our data, creating routes to cover those so that you don't have to have a pilot manually going in and updating those, through to data cleaning and killing the dots, being able to do that without as many hours of manpower dedicated to that. So yeah, I think there's a huge potential application.
Yeah, it's for the survey side. Yeah, we would be identifying gaps and doing as much processing on board to get to deliverables stage on board, and making the but there'll always be a human on the loop. It won't be fully autonomous. They always want to have that presence there to QC. We're just giving the surveyor more time to use their knowledge and skills to QC data as opposed to doing some of the more menial tasks.
Yeah. And to manage more vehicles. So it's all, for us, it's all really about how we enable scale. So if we can reduce the amount of time spent on kind of repetitive tasks, then we increase the number of vehicles that people can be involved with for a survey at any one time.
Okay, that's interesting. A question from Nicole. Would there ever be issues with towing sound velocity profilers on Voyager or Surveyor drones? I guess we've touched on that, but if you want to talk about that a little bit more.
Yeah, so the way that our operations work right now, we bring the vehicle to a stop for whenever we want to complete a cast. So I guess we wouldn't be towing it in a sense that, well, we're not towing it in a sense that we're not in motion. But yeah, we do have the ability to go down to currently 200 meters with our SVPs. And that is, so far that's working well. I think towing devices on a line at a greater depth for any extended period of time is a bit of a different use case. So that's kind of the answer I gave earlier, something that we'd consider as a separate integration.
Yeah, okay. The lifetime of the vehicle, what would you say that was at the moment, do you think?
For explorers, it's around 5 years. And for surveyors, we've only had one in operation for a couple of years, so we're still kind of working that number out.
Yeah, okay. And I guess, Andy, how long do you anticipate your integration and acceptance taking before you go fully operational?
So the we're expecting around like a 2-week customer acceptance test phase in the yard, and then depending on how long it'll take to deliver it to the site, normally 6 weeks if we're going by sea freight. Probably another 2 weeks after that, 2 to 3 weeks after that.
Wow, so it's a really quick.
As we get more vehicles and integrated into the business, we'll probably be able to constrict that as well. But a lot of those 2 to 3 weeks will be outperforming survey.
Yeah.
Hopefully, when we get it, we'll have some client demonstrations as well. So there'll be some actual at sea work going on within that commissioning period.
Okay. Well, thanks very much, guys. I think we've come to the end of our Q&A session. That was really informative, and I really appreciate you guys dialing in from the West Coast there. And now I guess the people watching over in the UK are going to go and enjoy themselves while you guys have got the rest of your day to do. And then vice versa tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks, Simon.
Thanks for having us.
Cheers.
It was a pleasure. And thank you, everybody, for watching this evening. The recording is available after the event. So enjoy your days, and thanks very much, and look out for more events coming in the future. Thanks very much, and good evening. Bye.